everybody, this is krmorrighan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some kind of general writing tips, not just for starting writing if you've never really written before, but also just sticking with it. And generally that's the hardest thing. It's easy to have an idea and to write a chapter, but it's really hard to actually see your story through to completion. That's the part where a lot of people give up. So today I want to talk about not giving up and persevering and getting your story finished and editing it and getting it out there. This is good for if you've never really written a lot before and you're kind of like, I don't know where to start, I have an idea, but I don't really know what to do. Or maybe you've been writing for a long time and you found that it's getting hard for you to like finish it up, like finish a project. Maybe you are kind of searching for inspiration. Maybe you've had a tough time kind of reminding yourself of the process that works best for you. So this is just kind of my general tips and ideas, and I hope that all of you can take something from that. So a little bit about me as a writer. I have been writing stories ever since I could really write and understood what a story was. I had to write a lot of like short creative stories for school and elementary school and stuff. I feel like other people, based on what I've heard about their experience, haven't really needed to do that. But I was always, as a kid, just like obsessed with reading fantasy, those kind of books, like that really creative, totally different world, escapism kind of feel. And then when I started writing, that was the kind of stuff I wanted to write. So I never really tried to write anything in like the realistic fiction genre. So I guess it's like when I started really getting older and really saying like I want to write all the time as like a job, and also I was like, this has to be a lifelong hobby for me regardless of if it pays. I never really thought about doing anything besides fantasy. So that idea kind of segues into writing tip number 1, which is write what you love and not what you think you should be writing. So we read these books and sometimes we think like, oh, the book was so great, I want to write something just like that. And then it can be really difficult. And then maybe you realize writing in a different genre is easier for you. That's exactly what happened to me. I was obsessed with these super long fantasy books. I wanted to write something just like them. And then when I sat down to do it, I basically just planned and planned and planned. Characters, world building, plot, whatever, plan for like months and never wrote anything. So that was not productive. And yeah, there's something to be said for planning. I mean, writing is like 80% planning, 20% writing, but it ended up like not working at all. I wasn't actually doing anything. I was just going around beating around the bush, trying to avoid actually writing anything because I wanted to be perfect the first time. That never happens. That's like a trade secret in case you're curious. Your first draft is never going to be your best draft, or very rarely going to be your best draft. You're always going to have to edit. So I realized then, I was like, why don't I just write smut? I love smut. I love writing about dudes falling in love. I love writing about, I love like fan fiction, fantasy worlds, people doing it in the fantasy world. I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. So I did it, and I love it. I can't wait to sit down and write every day. Write what you love. A story that you write with passion is going to do far better, even if it has a smaller audience or a smaller target market, or you're kind of like, what even is this genre? Does this even exist? Just, if you have the passion, it will always turn out better than if you just kind of write something because it is a large market and you don't care about it. That will come across in your writing no matter how much you try to hide it. Writing tip number 2 is write every day. There's controversy about this. Some people feel they do better if they only write when they feel like they're inspired. But in my opinion, like, inspiration is so hard to come by, and that really like pure passionate form where suddenly you're just like filled with this idea and you just write and it just happens. Like, and one professor told me not all stories can be easy, and I describe it as some are just like you sit down and it happens, and sometimes I feel like I'm literally pulling teeth. I want to punch all my characters in the face. I'm like, why are you being so difficult? Why can't you think of anything to say? I totally treat my characters like people with personalities because you have to. You know, they're a person who you create. So I get like mad at my characters. I'm like, why don't you have anything to say right now? But regardless, I power through and I write. And to the people who say that they should only really write when they have ideas or inspiration, I will say that you can always find ideas. You can find a million writing prompts online. Twitter is an amazing place for little tiny writing prompts. They, like, every day there's like a bunch of different people who host like little one-line stories, basically. They give you a prompt and all these writers give these little one-line stories. And, you know, if you are the kind of person you're like, God, I don't have anything I can do for my story today, go on Twitter, do one of those prompts and make it longer. Or find someone else's answer and steal it and write, you know, just write for yourself for the day. Do something every day. For this, I would definitely recommend, you can buy little writing journals that have like a little prompt for each day if you like handwriting it instead of doing it on the computer. You can get actual, Barnes & Noble sells like, I think it's called 365 writing prompts or something. It's just basically a prompt a day. And I had it, it was a little journal, it was so funny. I didn't actually do all of them, but one of them that I remember, it was like give an alien directions using only surfer lingo. And you had like this much space. And I was like, ugh. It was super fun and you had to be so creative. If you feel like writing prompts aren't necessarily your thing or you want to try something else, I would super recommend NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is single-handedly the biggest pain in the ass and the biggest gift that was ever given to writers. It is basically a challenge to write 50,000 words in a month. That breaks down to 1,600 words a day. The main event is held in November. So National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, is held in November every year. Basically, you make an account, and on your honesty, you put in how many words you've written each day, and if by the end of the month you have 50,000 words, you get a certificate. It's like, the only thing you really get is your own satisfaction. And trust me, I did it one year, and my own feeling of having done that was more than anything I ever could have been given. I didn't think I was going to do it. It was so hard. It was impossible. I didn't think I was going to be able to make 50,000 words in a month, but I did, and it was literally the best feeling in the world. I feel like I can climb mountains after doing that. And even better, you can now do it more than once per year if you are literally insane. If you really want to challenge yourself, they also host Camp NaNoWriMo in April and July. Those months, you don't have to write 50,000 words. You choose your own word count. Yeah, it's kind of like if 50,000 just seems like overwhelmingly daunting to you, do Camp NaNoWriMo and maybe do 30,000 words or 20,000 or 1,000. Number 3 is read. I hear so many people saying that they don't read and they want to be a writer, or they love writing but they never read. Guess what? It's not going to work out for you. Sorry. Like, it's just, if you want to write, you have to read. You have to be observing the craft and reading and thinking critically about what you're reading and how the characters are developed and how the writing is, and if you like certain things or if you don't like certain things, you have to be doing that, or else you're kind of flying blind. It's like writing without any sort of map or reference. Like, it's just wandering out into the woods and be like, oh, I'm an explorer, but I don't have to look at the map. That's literally what that is like. So if you are writing, you have to read. You have to observe what other people have done who have come before you, and work to try your best, work to replicate the things you like, work to avoid the things you don't like, things as a reader that bother you. Guess what? When you're a writer, they're going to bother your readers. So you have to wear both hats, really, is what I'm trying to get at. Here is writing tip number 4. This goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about with reading. Writing is, I would imagine many hobbies are like this. I would imagine many lines of work are like this. You don't sit down at your computer, put on your writing hat, write, get up, be done. You know, it's not like that. You're always writing, and you're always, more accurately, I guess I should say, you're always being a writer. So you go to the store, you see a person, maybe there's something interesting about what they're wearing or how they're acting, or they have an accent that indicates they're from someplace far away, and you can say, How did you get here? What is your life like? What are you going home to? Where are you going after this? Why are you here? What are you getting? Who's in your life? Who do you love? Who do you hate? You know, who's your family? What are they like? What are things that have really scarred you? What are things that have, you know, given you new life and spirit? Do you believe in something higher? Do you believe in the divine? What's your favorite food? What's your, you know, like all these questions you can think, and you can just play this game with random people, and you can make all this stuff up when you're just standing there doing nothing when you would normally be scrolling through Facebook or whatever. You can be doing this kind of thinking. And it's like an exercise. It's like an exercise that you can do literally anywhere in your brain. Some people journal. Some people come home every day and they write down all the things that day that they felt good about or guilty about, or things that they thought of that day, or maybe little tiny ideas that they had. You know, I think somewhere I heard the term plot bunny, and it was like the perfect word to describe what happens to so many people who, even if you don't write, like even if you just have any ounce of creativity, which everybody does, you get this weird little idea of like, it's not quite a story, but it's a little tiny idea of a little plot that maybe could become something, or just like a scene or a character. Don't just let that go to waste. Write it down, remember it, make a point. You know, when you are watching any TV show, any movie, when you're listening to any music, you don't have to be just a passive observer sitting there taking it in. If you want to do that, you can, but you will benefit greatly if you think about how it's composed, or how it's written, or how certain elements strike you. If you think critically about any way of telling a story, you will become a better writer. Fifth and final piece of advice. Do not be one of those people who cannot accept criticism. If you are a sensitive person, that's fine. I'm a very emotionally sensitive person. I get my feelings hurt easily. But when you bring your writing in to a workshop, or when you show it to a friend, or when you show it to a writer, or when you meet up with somebody online and you're sharing ideas, part of their job, they are doing you a disservice if they are nice to you about everything. Part of their job is to point out things that are wrong, and you have to, instead of getting defensive, instead of being like, oh, I did this because this, or this is for a purpose, or you don't understand, you have to just listen and think about it. Not necessarily take it personally, don't do necessarily what they say, but think about it. The best piece of advice I ever got about accepting criticism is, a lot of times somebody will say, oh, it seems like this character isn't well-rounded. Maybe add a scene of them doing something that makes them seem like a more fleshed out character. And if you're like, well, I don't want to add another scene of them, don't just be like, oh no, I don't want to accept that criticism. What you want to do is think, okay, they are, by asking me this question, or by making this criticism, or by making this comment, they are indicating that there is an underlying problem. So in this case of, if they criticize this character, there's an underlying problem with that character. And then your job isn't necessarily to just go, okay, they made a suggestion, let me just make that change and move on. It's about, what is the problem here? Like, why did they point that out? Does it happen in other places? What is the best way to fix it? So just be open-minded about criticism and understand the purpose of it and where it's coming from. Don't get caught up in what they say, get caught up and get thinking about what it means. And tip number 6. So I was originally just gonna have 5, but based on what I just said, I realized I should add a 6th one. And that is, know your audience. Know who you're writing for. One of the biggest mistakes you can make as a writer is just kind of write and like not know who's gonna be buying it. So you have to think about, you know, who is your main character? If your main character is a young woman, are you writing for young women? You know, I think about this a lot in the genre I write in, because my genre is, you know, gay romance, gay erotica, relationships between men, but written by a woman, mostly meant for women. It's just a phenomenon that people enjoy seeing relationships between two people of the opposite sex. That's just like kind of a fact, and I don't really know why. I don't understand brains, but that's just the way it is. So I think a lot about that, and a lot about, okay, should I be really realistic about things? You know, should I be a little more like poetic and not too descriptive, especially when it comes to like intimate scenes? Like, how descriptive should I be about things? How realistic should I be about things? Because a lot of times erotica is not a realistic genre, so you're kind of thinking about your audience in that sense, in terms of like, how real do they want this? How poetic or like romanticize, do they want this? And that's, so you have to think about with every genre, and that's part of why it's important to read. Because then you are a member of the audience and you know what you want, and you can assume that other members of that audience want the same thing. These are my 6 writing tips. 1, write what you love, write what you are passionate about. Number 2, write every day. Whatever it takes, write every day. Number 3, read. I couldn't remember. Number 3, read. Number 4, don't take off your writer's hat. Be a writer everywhere you go. Number 5, learn. Why can't I get my hand on the screen? Number 5, learn to accept criticism. Learn to interpret critical comments as a positive thing. And finally, number 6, know your audience. Know who you're writing for. If you're listening to this stuff and you're like, oh, I can't do this, I can't be a writer, don't let that stop you. Just do whatever works for you. And if you're like, wow, I can't do all of those things, do one of them. If you're like, wow, when I'm at the grocery store, I am distracted thinking about other stuff, I won't be able to, try to make, people watch and make up a story about people. If you're like, I can't do that, then just be like, okay, but I can write every day. I can read. I can read, and I can cut down the amount of time I spend reading and write in that, remaining time. You can do, there's little things you can do. You can do one step at a time until you become somebody who is writing all the time. Thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to what I have to say. Whether you're a beginner writer or you're someone who's been writing for a long time, I hope that this helped you gain a sense of how to really stick with it and persevere. Once again, my name is krmorrighan. You can find me on Amazon. I have 2 ebooks available. You can also find my blog on wordpress.com. I will link that below. I have a Twitter and an Instagram, which you can also check out. I also have ghostwriting and editing services available through Fiverr, which I will also link in the description. Keep reading. Remember tip number 3. Keep reading. Keep reading and keep loving. Bye.